Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. I'm hoping you guys are all having a fantastic day. So as you can tell by the title of the video, we will be talking about yet another potential new winter storm that is brewing. Now, I'm not talking about the one across the Northeast, the blizzard that we've been talking about for the past few days. There has been a growing confidence, and actually a confidence that is above average for how far out the system is, for a massive, potentially, again, a historic system, but this time across the Midwestern, Central, Southern, and potentially Northeastern United States yet again. So this thing is potentially probably going to be a lot more impactful for many more people. There could be snow as far south as Texas. There could be ice as far south as Texas as well. Arkansas could be over two feet of snow in some isolated spots. Yes, this thing is looking like a massive beast, and of course there is a chance for severe weather, as this thing is pretty much a cross-country monster. So there's a lot of stuff to go over, and I just want to jump right into that. I will quickly also go over the snowfall amount from this blizzard that is occurring across the Northeast. It's starting to wrap up, but I still want to go over some of the stuff, as that thing was truly an incredible storm as well. Before I get into that, however, I do want to say that if you are new to this channel, hello and welcome. I talk about the weather, so if you do, perhaps like this stuff, consider subscribing, consider liking. I always say this at the beginning, and I know if you're new, you don't have an opinion about this channel yet, but I always just forget at the end. So just keep that in mind. If you don't want to, that's perfectly fine. If you have any comments, questions about this winter storm, please leave them down below. I'll do my best to answer as many as I can, though if I get a ton, I might not do my best. I might not answer every single one. All right, let's start talking about this, the details of this winter storm. So, well, actually, I kind of lied, because first off, let's go over quickly this nor'easter and this threat that occurred right the past few days. It was a massive system, we were talking about a massive system, and it's finally wrapping up. I'll show you how much snow was dropped. And by the way, if you want to just focus, if you just want me to talk about that big winter storm across the Midwest, and you just want to hear that stuff, skip ahead a bit into the video. I don't know how long I'll talk about this, but I can imagine probably a few minutes. So just kind of take your cursor and skip ahead. But for now, I kind of want to go over some of these areas, because I want to see what we did right, what we did wrong, and that improves, my future forecasts, how the system performed versus how it should have performed versus how I thought it would perform. So let's take this back to 12 today noon. So you can see at this point, already by noon today, in terms of Eastern time, that's around 2 to 3. It was pulling out of New York, Long Island, still in that heavy snow. Boston was starting to, or I should say was still seeing that very heavy snow. And now finally Boston started to get out of the heavy snow. And you can see the system's falling apart in terms of the snow band. It is now way into Canada. You can see how strong and intense the system is. Look how fast those rain showers are moving very quick, pouring rain across St. John's, Sydney, so a lot of locations getting rain on this warm side of this thing. And I do want to note a very cool feature that I saw. Do you see this and how banded that is? I don't know if you guys may see that as well. Let me increase the opacity of this, so kind of like I guess the resolution or the thickness. Do you see that compared to this? This is more of a smooth band. It's just kind of a band you'd see in a large storm. This, however, is part of the storm, but it's a side effect. This is called ocean effect snowfall. So you do know how we have lake effect. This is pretty much it, but just on an ocean, hence the ocean effect name. So right now, Cape Cod is getting absolutely blasted with very heavy snow from this. You can see it's quickly moving as the winds kind of turn off the coast, and soon they will be off the coast. So this thing will kind of completely venture off land. But, areas like Nantucket, Yarmouth, Cape Cod, extreme locations out on here, Provincetown, you may actually pick up a few additional inches, because this thing's probably snowing 2 to 3 inches an hour. This is a pretty intense band of ocean effect snowfall. So that was something cool I wanted to point out. And you can see Maine is still struggling a bit with that snow, and will probably for the continued into this evening and well into the overnight hours probably. So these are the snowfall reports, and yes, if you recall, overall, this system, I would say, overperformed. More overperformed than underperformed. Obviously, I know that there's probably a few locations that underperformed. If you're in, say, Delaware or whatnot, northern locations really, I think, got quite a bit less than expected. But look at the southern locations. They got pretty much as anticipated, actually, a bit more. I vividly remember not being, there are any forecasts calling over 18 inches in New Jersey. And you can see that actually several locations did, just north and west of Atlantic City, 19, 18.5. So I would say it overperformed for the shore of Jersey, and even into Trenton, decent amounts to the north, south. Philadelphia, It says right there 5 inches at 7:30, but I think that's an older report because the ones that come out at 2 and 3 all have around 6 to 8 inches. So actually pretty darn accurate for Philadelphia, that 6 to 8 forecast I gave out, which was basically what the National Weather Service gave out. I just agreed with it. Notice in New York City, around 8 to 9, 10 inches. Pretty darn accurate. Obviously, the snowfall totals dropped off pretty far to the north and west, but that's what we were anticipating. And I would say overall a pretty good performer, about as kind of as anticipated. But quickly, as you get onto Long Island, you see the amounts getting towards 24, 22. That was overperformed. They were not expecting the red colors, if you will. They were calling for 12 to 18 for Long Island, and it got in some areas over 2 feet. So that definitely overperformed. Connecticut underperformed over here, but again, some of these amounts were expected to be lighter. I don't recall specifically how much lighter. I feel like that's a bit on the lower end. And here might be a bit higher than anticipated. As you move up towards Boston, you can see that the snowfall reports are a bit lighter, but that's not because it necessarily underperformed the system. It's because basically the system arrived here later, right? And these snowfall reports you can see aren't all updated as well. And of course, it's still snowing across many of these locations. So, you could assume that if there's 14.5 inches right there, Logan Airport, Massachusetts, right in the center of Boston, at 12, you could assume that there's been probably at least 6, 7, 8 inches additionally that fell there. At least I'm estimating. Notice that the heaviest snowfall totals are centered towards the south of Boston. That's exactly where they were supposed to fall. So that is definitely a good, good indicator that the forecast panned out pretty accurately. Do note that there are some decent amounts already up into Maine. At 5 o'clock, we have 12.5, 12.4, I should say. Right there we have 12 at 5. This was at 2, so you could assume that there's some heavier amounts here already. So yes, this storm is still, I guess we don't know how much fell across Maine and New Hampshire areas yet, but some of these also probably going to get like Yarmouth quite a bit with that ocean effect additional snowfall, as that is most definitely impressive and probably dropped alone a few inches, I would assume, maybe an inch or two. Depends. And yeah, so that's basically that system. And now we shift towards the Midwest. Obviously, we don't have going on. We have nothing going on. That storm. Yes. And by the way, I'm pretty much done talking about the system now. So if you've skipped forward and you found me here, you've landed on the perfect spot. But basically, I want to go over a few rough details before I start showing you different models and whatnot, different scenarios. So this thing would be a multi-day system, meaning that it would probably span not just, 1 day or 2 days, probably start affecting the United States around early Tuesday and pull out of the kind of United States and Southern Canada area that I forecast for on Thursday, probably more so Friday and late Friday, if not Saturday. So it's a multi-day event. And I do want to note that, yes, this thing is going to be occurring this week. So it's not terribly far out. And I do want to say that this thing will have a center of the low pressure somewhere across the United States, not off the coast. So what this means is that basically not only are we going to be dealing with an inevitable snowy side, but also ice, sleet, freezing rain and severe weather by itself. So there will be some folks that are warm and rainy, cold and blustery, icy and slippery, breaking their backs on the ice. Hopefully not, but you get the point that there is a whole plethora of different variations of precip, and of course, where this exactly falls, which cities end up in the ice or the rain or the snow, or just kind of everything passes to the south of them. This is all the big question of this system. And as I mentioned at the beginning, we have above average confidence in this system actually occurring at this distance. Usually, sometimes there is, if you recall in Nor'easter, there was above the 84-hour mark, there was still significant considerations where that this thing could just kind of take off onto the coast and not affect the United States. Not with a system that's in the middle of the United States. This thing, if it goes north, south, west, east, there's someone that's going to get impacted by this, and someone could get impacted by this in a pretty large and significant way. Let's start off with the GFS model. Again, this one did kind of disappoint about that northeast system, right? It was late to the trend. It showed it off coast, and that's obviously not what, that's not what happened. So would that mean that, it has a poor handling on this next system? Not necessarily. And that's kind of like a fallacy that I often committed when I was a bit younger. I assumed that, because a certain model performed poorly on one system, the one right after it will also do poorly because it stretches for a period of time. And it's not necessarily the case. While it may definitely be, it's not something that you should be used against the GFS. So at this point, we're back to ground zero, and we'll just have to watch trends and kind of see what the other ensembles are doing besides the GFS and the European, say like the Canadian, the UK model, the German model, and the high res. So let's take a glance at the GFS. Notice what we do see is a few days of quiet weather. So into tomorrow, Sunday, actually probably the calmest days out of many of the days that, sorry about that, are upcoming. They're pretty much nothing compared to the war zone that will be going on in a few days in terms of the warring of the precip types and variations. But do note that there is a bit of cold air to the north and east. It is going to be pretty chilly. Very warm to the north, actually. Montana, South Dakota, all above freezing. And in fact, let me take a look at some of these temperatures tomorrow at, this is midnight, but let's go a bit in the afternoon. And you can see we have decently warm temperatures. Nothing balmy, but nice temperatures. I would say almost warm towards the south, southwest. Nothing, again, heat intensive, I guess, or not a heat wave. But do note that what we do start seeing is a system that moves in towards the northwest. Now, this thing, what it does, it pulls in a lot of warm air as it's pretty far to the north. As itself, it's pretty far to the north. So all low pressure spin like this. They bring winds on the north side, or on the northwest side, kind of on the upper side of it, so in that fashion. And the winds on the south side of the system, including the help from a high pressure, which is centered right here, and it's high pressure spin the opposite way. We see warm air just driving to the north, and around this you can see these mountains right here are providing a little bit of a great kind of sheltering, and that causes that warm air to really pump up towards the north. And again, you can see the 32-degree line way into Wisconsin on Tuesday. A pretty warm day Tuesday for many. And as I put this forward, you can see that by Tuesday afternoon we start seeing rain breaking out across Illinois, Missouri. And while this may not look like a part of a winter storm, this is the very beginning of what's going to be a massive event. You're going to notice that there is some convective energy off the Gulf Coast, meaning that the conditions for a convection and heavy doses of moisture going to the north is ample and very very suitable. I want to take a look at some of these temperatures because this is midday Tuesday. Let's take a glance at this, and do note that compared to the cold temperatures we've been seeing, this is pretty nice. I think this is the first time my area, Chicago, I know for a fact, will be going above 40 degrees since January 15th. Or 18th, I think one of those 2 days. So that is definitely a almost over a month at this point, or over half a month that hasn't happened. So it'll honestly feel pretty nice. I don't know how warm it's been across the south, but definitely warmer than the past few days. So that's definitely gonna feel pretty cool, I guess. A lot of snow melting where that snow fell across the northeast, as you can see, towards afternoon, and especially into Wednesday, above average temperature or below. Above freezing temperatures, above average temperatures. But let's go back to this system and let's trace it back to that Tuesday evening time frame. Well, I guess I spoiled it because this is what the GFS thinks will happen. Do note, Tuesday, we see that rain kind of forming on the cold front side of this storm. And that's kind of what it is. And do note that we see a large cold front of very heavy snow breaking out across Missouri, Kansas, Illinois, Michigan. Now, this is just one scenario. So if you're currently watching me and looking at this map and seeing, oh wow, Detroit's on the wet side of this, that's unfortunate. Don't jump to those conclusions just yet. While this is definitely a scenario that is possible, there's quite a bit of models that show this a bit further towards the south. Meaning that some even show this snow avoiding areas like Chicago, Iowa, and the rain getting down into more of Cincinnati, Louisville, Cincinnati, Louisville, yeah, right there, and potentially towards St. Louis, and that snow band obviously moving towards the south as well into Detroit, central Illinois, and southern Missouri, not that far to the north. Again, it's very interesting. We'll have to be watching these ensembles very closely because this track seems to be very favorable for extremely heavy snow by the GFS, just again further towards the north. So notice that this thing initially started off as a cold front of this massive low pressure to the north, but by Wednesday morning, so this is 6 a.m., it is still snowing very heavily across Indiana, Michigan, Illinois, into Missouri. Again, assuming this scenario, but do note that there's something mischievous going on here. This thing is not dying off, right? It's not moving towards the west or towards the east like a cold front would. It starts stalling. It separates from that system. We see moisture coming in from the south, from the mountains. You notice a lot of Colorado breaking out into snow. Kansas, Oklahoma, we do see an ice threat according to this model right through St. Louis. Would be pretty bad. Notice that this band, wherever it does start, eventually does slide to the south throughout the day on Wednesday. So that puts areas like Detroit, northern Indiana, Ohio into snow. Kansas City, I should say, central Missouri, But notice right here, we see a intense explosion of precipitation. We see ice, freezing rain, sleet, the panhandle of Texas in a very heavy snow event, much of east or western Texas, Oklahoma. So again, southern locations, and potentially Dallas seeing crippling ice, and wherever this ice ends up, according to the scenario, it's Dallas. And look, this thing forms into another system. So what started off as a cold front, this multi-day beast is now producing snow, where potentially rain was on Tuesday, now just shovelfuls of snow, tons of ice, a lot of potentially severe weather threats, as this thing is powerful and packed with moisture. And look, this thing goes towards the north and east and kind of ejects out. So I said that by Friday this thing will be wrapping up. I meant to say more of Saturday, because you could see 6 a.m. Friday, this thing is still going on across the northeast. It does speed up out of here, but still giving a good blast of snow for the southern Canadian cities of really Montreal, Toronto, Ottawa, Quebec, all 4 of the major ones. And notice where we do have the 20 inches of snow in Boston and whatnot, they could be seeing quite a bit of rain, so that could cause some flooding threats. But thankfully it does convert over to colder air, so I guess not all of it will melt, so it's not a complete deluge. Total snowfall, this is what everybody is wondering about. Do note that a lot of this is inaccurate across, especially Arkansas, because this includes sleet, and the model treats it as snow. So this will be falling as freezing rain or sleet, but into Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, look at some of these snowfall totals that this area puts out. So it puts, Chicago at a gradient of anywhere from 6 to 18 inches to the south. Obviously, this is assuming a 10-to-1 ratio, which I would say that's pretty plausible. To the north, though, it will be a bit higher. But look at that stripe right there. That's the last time a system has dropped this much snow. Where, was I don't really remember. I think 2015, maybe Winter Storm Linus across these areas. Now, again, this is pretty far out, and the models often show way higher amounts pretty far out. So take this with a grain of salt for now. But do note that a significant weather event and winter storm is possible. Significant really marks anything 6 inches plus. Not 20. So don't get too caught up on those amounts. And I just want to mention, some of these models really disagree with each other, and that's the other thing. This would be hard enough to forecast if the GFS was the accurate one and it just did what it does. But look, there's a model called the Canadian, and I'll just show you the snowfall footprint. It's much further to the south. It shows snow into more of Oklahoma City, Kansas, similar areas seeing snow here, but instead of Chicago or even Detroit picking up significant snow, or northern Indiana, Ohio, it's more into St. Louis, Indiana, Ohio right there, decent amounts into upstate New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, not missing really most of southern Canada with the heaviest of the snow. But again, where the snow falls, it's still extremely heavy. Just again, it's a bit narrower and further towards the south. Which model has a better handle? At this point, it's hard to tell, really. The GFS and the Canadian are pretty different, and overall, the system setup is the same. So again, that's why I'm saying we have good confidence in this system occurring. The details are a mess, but look, there's that system. Starts off as a cold front, and I'll just let you watch through. Notice it's very similar. It's just that it's much further towards the south, and it's maybe a bit slower as well, but that doesn't necessarily mean higher snowfall amounts because it's slower. I do want to say that for the total accumulated precipitation, there is quite a bit of rain on the rainy side of this, so these cities here you have to watch. I didn't go in depth in a weather analysis in terms of severe weather. I didn't kind of look at it, so I don't know how potent it's looking, but definitely something will could be a factor, and that makes the system just like a classic dangerous winter storm. Not only is it snowy, but there's ice, there's rain, just a classic beast. I should say classic meaning one that could go down into history. So I do want to show you one more model, the European model. This is one that tracked the nor'easter, if you recall, pretty accurately. I would say it did the best job out of all the models. Again, whether or not it has a good handle on this system, it's hard to tell. Honestly, pretty impossible to tell, whether or not that will continue on. So again, we're just starting from ground zero. And do note that we have that system that the European shows. It does develop that rain band and that snow, and you can see that it's a bit further towards the north than the Canadian, but it's a bit further towards the south than the GFS. So the European is kind of in the middle, right between all the models. Notice that rain band or rain and snow band moves to the south. So Indiana, Michigan picking up that snow throughout the day. Illinois, Missouri, still decent amounts of snow and rain and freezing rain into Texas, causing a mess. And then look, we see that strengthening of the system out ahead of this strengthening jet stream that causes this moisture to propel a bit more with the northerly direction. And again, if you recall, the GFS had a more northern direction to this. The European is a bit quicker and a bit more progressive and shifts it a bit towards the east, meaning a bit more snow maybe for cities like Cincinnati, southern Ohio, but not as much towards Indiana, Michigan, and Illinois. So not as much of a concentrated band of heavy snow, more of a widespread moderate band of heavy snow. I do want to say that it also, according to the European, eclipsed some of these cities. Starts off Boston with quite a bit of rain and then eclipses it towards snow, and then it's out of here. So in terms of total total snowfall, a 10-to-1 ratio being assumed, which again, some of this may be falling at a heavier, higher or lower ratio. This is the snowfall, and you can see it's pretty significant in terms of its stretch. It's a lot of areas being covered by it, but it's not as significant. It's maybe a 8 to 12 inch event compared to a 2 feet plus according to the GFS. This may be or may not be a better handling of the system. It's kind of hard to tell. Just to compare it on the same website, this is what the GFS showed as of the most recent model run. Here you can see right there, and it's been again more towards the north with pretty much every single model run. It has had a bit of a deviance back and forth, but it's been holding consistent with its scenario. So you can see it's further towards the north, this snow band. And assuming accurate snowfall ratios, I mean, look at that. This could be pretty legendary if this were to occur, right? 30 plus inches, that seems a bit high, honestly, but it's a possibility since this thing will be occurring for such a long period of time with such ample amounts of moisture. Look, all of southern Canada, these major metros also seeing close to 2 feet. In terms of centimeters, that's 40-50 centimeters, guys. So that is something to be, I guess, worried about. Canadian, if you recall, unlike the European, it showed it further towards, or like the European, it showed it further towards the south, but it kept that extreme intensity, and not like the European, it stretched it out. And you can see St. Louis is almost at like 20 plus inches. Here it shows 30. That's probably a bit extreme, but regardless, a very intense system potentially, according to both the Canadian and GFS. The European, very impactful system, just not, I guess, intense with those snowfall amounts. Again, at this point, it's too early to tell whether or not the European is a bit, not accurate, or the GFS has more accuracy with it. I do know that the National Weather Service is slightly leaning with the European scenario or its ensembles, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're a kind of a lighter event, because the National Weather Service said it's more with agreeing with the European ensembles. And again, that agreeing is very, very changeable. Right now, there's thinking that the European ensembles have a slightly better handling of this system. But if you were to look at some of the members of the European family, some, just like the GFS and Canadian, show a massive system. So it's it's not all that the Europeans, not all European ensembles, the family members show a system that's so widespread, which is still very impactful and arguably more impactful because of how large that spread is. Do note that I want to show you some ensembles. So these are a bunch of models that I was talking about, right? 31 GFS-like models combined into an average. So it takes all of their predicted snowfall and puts it into an image. It's good for forecasting systems because you could have a glance in terms of trends. So take a look at yesterday at midnight. This is what the system showed, or the models. You can see that's what it was advertising for. Pretty good amounts across much of the Midwest. But as we get closer in time to systems, the ensembles obviously either shift the track and they focus where that heaviest will fall. Notice there was a slight southern shift with that morning run. Today at noon, it was a bit, not really a southern shift. It was just a bit more widespread, that band. And today in the evening, it was the shift was slightly towards the north and more intense. So you can see that the GFS are actually leaning towards more of an intense scenario. Now, I will show you the European ensemble. So again, if you recall, the European itself forecasted for a larger, more broad event rather than just an isolated heavy band. But this is at 12 o'clock noon. This is what it advertised. So you can see pretty good amount. Again, a lot of them doing a similar thing with the GFS and Canadian with the heaviest snow across a concentrated area. You can see it's a bit further towards the south compared to the GFS heaviest. And again, these are many models combined, so it's kind of the average. But take a look at yesterday at noon. This is what it showed. So again, it shifted a bit towards the south at midnight, actually quite a bit further towards the south. But today at noon, again, 12 hours later, it shifted back a bit towards the north. So I think that the track will be changing still. In what direction? Goodness, I honestly can't tell you guys. It's at this point, I've dealt with many of these systems before. I would say that if anything, maybe a more southern slightly track in the next few days, but honestly, I would not be surprised if there's a northern trend as well. So at this point, we'll just have to stay tuned with these models. If, by tomorrow late at night or Monday late at night we see all the models, showing what the GFS shows, then that's pretty clear which one has a better handling of it and we have more confidence. If they show more what the Europeans show, then again, that's also clear what they are agreeing on. And again, we'll just have to wait and see exactly how this unfolds. If the European starts trending towards the north, the GFS was the more accurate one in this scenario, and vice versa. So we'll have to wait and see. But again, it's a massive system potentially that's going to be occurring. The National Weather Service is warning about it. And yeah, we just got done with a big beast, but we have another one on its way. So thank you guys so much for watching. I'll catch you all in the next episode. See ya. Bye.